All right, Brooklyn Maboyim, welcome everyone. I like to once in a while answer questions for Quora, and the question here is the modern Orthodox conversion different or more lenient than a Charedi conversion? This is talking about conversion to Judaism. Modern Orthodoxy is generally the religious Zionist communities, which generally the rabbis might wear black hats and some of the lay people might on the Sabbath, but for the most part, most of the people dress just like pretty much everybody else in the Western society, except with the yarmulke and tzitzis, but they keep kosher Sabbath, pray 3 times a day, and many of them are great Torah scholars. The question is it different or more lenient than the Charedi conversion? Charedi is what's usually termed as ultra-Orthodox. Those would be the communities that are either non-Zionist or anti-Zionist, and among those you have 2 major divisions, so that there are others. There's the Hasidic world and the Lithuanian or Yeshiva world. So the Hasidim would be the ones with the long side locks, long beards, for the most part, long coats, the fur hats and things. And then the Lithuanian world, some have beards, some don't. Some have a payas behind their ears, some don't. They wear the black hats and regular suits. Rabbis might wear a frock, that's a long frock, and a bowler hat or a Hamburg hat, something like that. Some do and some don't. Different traditions among these different communities. Now, these questions are not really cut and dry as far as how this goes. So for the most part, I would say the modern Orthodox conversions are much more structured. Meaning you would go into a program, and also the big thing is that it's recognized by the Israeli government, particularly if it's a more centrist or right-wing modern Orthodox, that they would follow certain protocols, whether the protocols of the Geras Protocol, GPS, of the RCA, of the Rabbinical Council of America, and we're working through them, and it's usually a longer process among the centrists and the right-wing modern Orthodox, and it's probably the more difficult type of conversions, and there's a lot more politics involved with the either centrist or right-wing modern Orthodox communities. Among the modern Orthodox, there's also what's sometimes called the open Orthodox, which are a more liberal form of Orthodoxy. Their conversions tend to be much simpler and easier to attain. Less politics involved, usually not recognized by the Israeli government for the political reasons, but halachically valid, meaning following Jewish law for the most part, although some branches or some individuals that identify with those communities might be questionable as to the halachic validity of their conversions. For the most part, they are kosher conversions that are probably not politically recognized, although in the past they were. Now, as far as the Charedi world, it's a little bit different. You don't have the structure generally, particularly in the Hasidic world. Generally speaking, particularly in the more right-wing Hasidic world, I've seen it myself. I've sat on Batei Din, on conversion courts, with some of the greatest rabbis of our current generation, both from the modern Orthodox, somewhat flanking the modern Orthodox and Hasidic world, and flanking the modern Orthodox and Yeshiva world. Certain places there isn't that much of a difference. That's what I think is a beautiful thing, that instead of all these politics of I belong to this group or that group, it's somewhere, where it's just more inclusive. And so I've sat on Batei Din with some of the most highly well-recognized rabbis who are respected in all of these worlds, in the ultra-Orthodox world, Charedi world, and in the modern Orthodox world. And I've seen different things when it comes to how these conversions are conducted. So generally, if it's recognized by the Israeli government, by the Rabbanut, by the chief rabbinate of the Israeli government, it tends to be much more difficult, and those tend to be, again, what we would call the centrist or right-wing modern Orthodox. Those tend to be the most difficult conversions. The yeshivish among the Charedim tend to generally be together with those groups as far as that's concerned. And then among the Hasidic world, particularly Satmar, conversions tend to be much easier as long as the person is sincere and pious. And there's generally no expectation for someone to join that community, to have a conversion through that community. And so, while it's not as quote-unquote easy as, let's say, the open Orthodox, who might have lower standards, the ultra-Orthodox, the more right side of the ultra-Orthodox world, generally speaking, don't go through all of the bells and whistles and politics of that. You have to go through a very regimented process to convert. But nonetheless, the conversion tends to be something that you can get done, and as long as the person is sincere about the religious life and so forth, generally you get it done. That's how it works. So that's basically how the conversions get done. Meaning if someone is going to live a Shomer Shabbos life and keep mitzvahs and believes in our faith and has been studying and living a Jewish life, generally speaking, it's not that difficult to get the conversion done in the more right-wing ultra-Orthodox Charedi world. So it's really, and with certain things it depends on, it can change from one rabbi to another, meaning some rabbis a little bit easier to work with, some rabbis are a little more difficult to work with. It's another aspect of what we see in these worlds. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share. So there's really no answer to this question because each rabbi is going to be different. You're going to find much more structure generally in the modern Orthodox world, and you're going to find a lot of diversity in the Charedi world. But they're really essentially, halachically speaking, the same. The major difference is generally the modern Orthodox will be a little bit more demanding as far as a time commitment for conversion. That's a big thing I've seen, and also depends from each one country to another. So, for example, in England, it could take up to 7 years to convert. In America, generally it takes a year or two. Some of the Charedi conversions could take about 6 months to do. So, for one to be ready and so forth. And some, generally, like if you have a sponsoring rabbi who knows you and you've been studying with the rabbi for a long enough time, and then bring the rabbi over to the Beis Din, they'll usually do it pretty quickly. Maybe that same day, maybe a week later, so forth. these are the experiences that I've had working again with some of the top bate. All right, this has gone on too long. Sorry for making such a long video. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.